Tere õhtust, tere tulemast, tervitan teid kõiki täna õhtusele webinaarile. Welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's In Focus with EANC session, which we've entitled Russia's War Against Ukraine and the Implications for European Security and Beyond, the Perspective from Estonia. I am Mai-Liis Bartling, the president of the Estonian American National Council, EANC, or Eesti Rahvuskomitee Ühendriikides erku. A word about erku, particularly when so much is happening on the world stage, it's crucial that Estonians in the US have an advocate for their interests. For over 70 years, EANC has been the central organization for Estonian Americans. EANC has a nationally elected council. Its dual mission is to ensure that the collective voice of Estonian Americans is heard, as well as to support local Estonian communities and cultural projects. And you can find us at www.estosite.org or on Facebook. These are perilous and unsettling times. We are deeply concerned for Ukraine in its fight for freedom and sovereignty in the face of Russian aggression. We are concerned for broader Baltic and European security, and we are concerned for the rapidly shifting US foreign policy. We may not be of one mind on all matters. We might want to turn inward at this time, but let's not. Rather, let's reach out to support Ukraine and let's stand together for a secure Europe. Our goals this evening are to share accurate, up-to-date information, share Estonian government, the Estonian government's and European perspective, and to encourage Estonian Americans to make their voices heard and to provide tools and resources to do that. We also want to provide opportunity for questions. We're pleased to have two knowledgeable, capable speakers to address these topics. So thank you to our speakers. So let me introduce first Kristjan Prikk. Kristjan Prikk has served as Estonia's ambassador to the United States since May of 2021, and this is his third diplomatic posting to Washington, D.C. He brings just the right background and skill set to this difficult assignment. Before assuming his current duties, he served for nearly 3 years as the permanent secretary of the Estonian Ministry of Defense. And prior to that, he worked for 2 years as Undersecretary for Defense Policy in the Ministry of Defense. And before that, as the Director of National Security and Defense Coordination for Estonia, responsible for the whole of government interagency approach to national defense. And before joining the Ministry of Defense, he served for the Foreign Ministry on NATO issues. He holds a master's degree from the Strategic Studies program of the United States Army War College and a bachelor's in political science and economics from the University of Tartu. Of special note, he has performed his required military service in the Estonian Defense Forces, where he remains a reserve officer, and is also a member of Estonia's voluntary defense organization, Kaitseliit, and has been decorated many times. And I also want to introduce Karl Altau. And Karl is the managing director for JBANC. And JBANC is the Joint Baltic American National Committee. And since 1961, JBANC has been the united presence of the Baltic community on the ground in Washington, D.C. Karl has served JBANC since 1997. And where he has helped conduct extensive advocacy on behalf of the Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian central organizations in the US. This includes the period of NATO accession for the 3 Baltic countries and the campaign for Magnitsky sanctions against human rights violators in Russia. He has addressed the Baltic parliaments and the US Congress on the work of the Baltic American communities. Karl's a native Virginian with a degree in journalism from Radford University and has lived and studied in Sweden, Finland, Estonia, and at Indiana University. And he's served on the boards of the Maryland Estonia Exchange Council and numerous other projects. He spent 3 years with the consular section of the Embassy of Estonia in Helsinki, Finland from 1992 to 1995. And then I also want to introduce our moderator tonight, Mai-Liis. And Maia is the Vice President of the Estonian American National Council and is a U.S. delegate to the Estonian World Council, where she serves as foreign policy as the chair of the Foreign Policy Committee. Maia is an associate professor of economics at the Robbins School of Business at the University of Richmond. She received her PhD from Johns Hopkins University with doing research that examined the political economy of trade policy and related issues. Her research has appeared in a number of journals, and she's a member of the board of directors of the International Trade and Finance Association. She teaches students both at the beginning of their economics coursework and at the culmination of their studies, incorporating different models of community-based learning. In 2022, she received the Bonner Center for Civic Engagement Community Engaged Teaching Award. And now I would like to turn the session over to Kristjan Prikk. Welcome, Kristjan.
Thank you very much, Mai-Liis, and I'd like to thank all the listeners today, all who have dialed in, so to say, and all the co-speakers. My apologies for my voice. It's I think I was overly enthusiastic about the spring weather, and now the results you can hear those, but I hope you don't mind and the voice holds, so to say. So I was asked to talk about the Estonian view of the Russian aggression against Ukraine and how we see the current situation as well as future outlook. Now, if you don't mind, I have to start from the year 2022 when it all started in its current form, I would say. In fact, the Russian aggression started more than 11 years ago when they annexed and occupied as a result of a military operation, Crimea, and later fomented the I would say fake uprising in Donbass area. But fast forward to February 2022, the war did not happen overnight, or the full-scale aggression did not happen overnight. It was not the result of some kind of temporary misunderstandings or let's say friction between the two countries, but it was a result of well-prepared and deliberately carried out policies and military actions. So we all know everyone who paid attention to what was happening then. Russia collected its forces for over many months on the borders of Ukraine and carried out a thorough and unprecedented after Second World War in Europe, unprecedented military and political coercion campaign. As part of this campaign, Russia also spelled out its very clear strategic objectives related to this war. These were in the form of ultimata that Russia presented to NATO and the United States in December 2021. And these ultimata gave a very clear understanding that for Russia, this war is not just about Ukraine, but about so much more. Firstly, of course, they were interested, and they still are interested in subjugating Ukraine fully to Russian rule. But secondly, they also demanded NATO to pull back to its 1997 posture. So essentially creating a buffer zone without proper collective defense guarantees on the border of Russia. That would mean, or would have meant, going along with his ultimatum would have mean also that Estonia would have been part of this buffer zone. And thirdly, they demanded US to critically reduce its role in guaranteeing the European security. Now, we believe that the end result of this war will define the security of not only Ukraine, but security of Europe, and by extension, the rules of the game, so to say, or the security on the global arena. Recently, over the past couple of months, there has been a lot of talk, a lot of discussion about peace. And of course, peace is something that we all need for our better future. And to be sure, of course, we all want it. World wants it. Europe wants it. And this is what Ukrainian people want and need the most: peace. I mean, now, but it's very important to understand that for this peace to be not only just but also lasting, durable, Estonia firmly believes that this peace has to be based on the fundamental rules of international law, including the territorial integrity and sovereignty of countries. These are the principles that are enshrined in UN Charter since the end of Second World War, and and if we let these principles go, so to say, then it's not just Ukraine that cannot be safe anymore, but it's every country in the world basically whose neighbor may have some designs, some ideas about territorial annexation and invasion. Now, unfortunately, we believe that, we firmly believe that Vladimir Putin has not changed Russia's strategic objectives. The same objectives that I mentioned that preceded the full-scale invasion in 22, the same objectives are still very much relevant. We've heard the same objectives being mentioned by Vladimir Putin and his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov. Most recently, Putin referred to the same objectives or demands only today, while meeting with the mothers of killed soldiers in his war of imperial conquest. Now, at the same time, Russia has been pretty good in creating the illusion of strength, illusion of Russian strength. Why I say illusion? Because we and Estonia really follows what's happening in Russia very closely. Estonia follows very closely what's happening also in the battlefield in Ukraine, and we firmly believe that both militarily as well as economically, Russia is doing much worse than they want us to believe. they are not only having trouble with manpower of any training or with any training, but they also are in some cases critically low in some key pieces of military hardware. In some other pieces, though, I do admit that they've been doing much better, unfortunately, than we would have expected them to do. On economy, they are running critically low on liquid assets. During the war or in the course of the war, they have used or depleted their so-called national welfare fund. Their interest rates are 25%. They have been forced to raise taxes and reduce benefits, except for the benefits for those recruited and killed in the war. So again, we believe that that fundamentally Russia is much weaker than they want us to believe. Now, the lasting peace, as I referred to, we believe can only happen if we first, and when I say we, I'm referring to the Western alliance that has helped Ukraine to sustain in this war and has been able to assist Ukraine in their war of independence, I would say. If we really do a couple of things first. Firstly, we believe that Russia should and Russia can be further pressured, or we can put more pressure on Russia, both economically as well as through political means. But particularly, I'm referring to strong sanctions on their entire energy sector, their entire banking sector, and also secondary sanctions on those who try to do business with them. Secondly, we have to keep on providing the Ukrainians with the military assistance that we have agreed to before and the military assistance that they need right now. And thirdly, we have to discuss and agree to the credible security guarantees for Ukraine for the moment after the war. For the very that would kick in in the very first moment after the shooting stops. These security guarantees have to be there in order for Ukraine to really think that this time it's different. After all, there have been, I believe, 25 different major ceasefire agreements with between Ukraine and Russia, both bilaterally as well as through intermediaries between 2014 and 2022, and none of these actually held. So the credible security guarantees must have teeth and must have the buy-in from both the European countries as well as the United States with some backup. Now, some may ask, what about Europe in general when it comes to defense and security, taking defense seriously? Now, Estonia, for sure, is the country that is taking defense very seriously. For defense spending, let me remind you, the NATO agreed level of defense spending is at 2% per GDP of every nation at minimum. Estonia currently is spending at the level of 3.4% of our GDP. So we are second in NATO after Poland, and yes, even ahead of the United States in terms of spending per GDP. Estonian government has indicated the need to go higher, and in the coming years we are aiming at 4% and even higher up until or up to 5% of GDP of defense spending. Now, Estonia is also a front runner when it comes to aid to Ukraine. Estonia thus far has delivered to Ukraine approximately since the full-scale invasion started, approximately 550 million US dollars of aid. As a ratio to our GDP, this is approximately 2.03% of GDP. Estonia is number one in the world in terms of military assistance to Ukraine as a ratio to GDP. And the Estonian government has committed to at least 0.25% of our GDP annually, in addition to what's already been sent to Ukraine. The rest of Europe is certainly also doing its part. And in fact, according to the numbers of collected by so-called Kiel Institute that has been tracking the aid from different parties since the full-scale invasion started. Europe has contributed contributed and delivered around $140 billion of aid, and US has committed and delivered approximately $120 billion of aid. Why the discrepancies from different sources? It's mostly because Europe has committed both through the individual nation states as well as through the European Union through common funding. And this has created a lot of confusion sometimes. But again, my strong message here is that Europe is doing not only its part, but more than its part. We also have to understand that the European contribution that is often overlooked is also in terms of receiving Ukrainian refugees. Estonia has received approximately 62,500, approximately more than 62,000 asylum applications in Estonia. This is approximately 4.6% out of Estonian population. Again, Estonia is one of the front runners in that. But even countries as far from Ukraine as Portugal has received significant amount of Ukrainian refugees, provided them with shelter, with healthcare, with education, because mostly these are women, children, and the elderly. So this is a significant contribution, and we tend to keep contributing this way. I would rather, I think, stop right here, right now, just being conscious of the time. And I am certainly able or available and very much open to every question afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will go on to Karl Altau. And I just want to comment that if you have questions, you can be writing them in the chat and now. And then after Karl will be Maia will be moderating the questions. And just to also make a comment that in order to accommodate all the interested people, we decided to go with the webinar format, which doesn't allow for direct discussion between the attendees, but you will be able to answer, get your questions. You can put your questions in chat, and they'll get answered in that way. So thank you. So we can move to Karl.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you, Mai-Liis, and thank you to EANC for putting this webinar together, for hosting this. I think it's a very invaluable way of connecting with the community and having people express their interest in certainly very compelling issues. And I wanted to say hello to Ambassador Prikk. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. Sorry you're a little under the weather. I'm feeling a little crusty myself today. I think I had the flu this week, but I'm getting better, but I have my throat lozenges close by just in case. Excuse me. So I wanted to basically break my comments into two main sections, and one is just a little bit of background about our organization and what we do in our networks, because I think that's important to understand that and the power that we have as a community to engage with the powers that be, especially here in Washington, D.C. So my perspective is maybe not so much from Estonia, but from the Baltic American community in the United States, and especially from Washington, Washington, D.C. And then after I do a little bit of introduction about that, for those of you maybe who aren't familiar with our work, then to talk about specific advocacy issues and concerns and opportunities to use those tools, as Mai-Liis had said in the introduction, use those tools to do something yourself if you feel compelled to. And I know that there are a lot of people who are interested right now. We're already gauging from our preliminary registration for Baltic Advocacy Days, which are happening in about a month, that we already have a record number of people who have signed up for that. So that's a very good clue that people are paying attention and really want to do something and help the cause. So the Joint Baltic American National Committee, JBANC, as we're known, was formed in 1961 in April, so we'll be 64 years old next month. The three of the Baltic national central organizations came together then, so the Estonian American National Council, the American Latvian Association, and the Lithuanian American Council to form JBANC. And there was a real need to do that at the time to join together, work together for the common good. And we continue to do that. In the meantime, we've worked very closely also with the Lithuanian American Community Organization and also the Baltic American Freedom League over the years. So we coordinate activities of our organizations, as I said, in Washington with the U.S. Congress, with the administration and its agencies, and also with the media. We're very engaged in the think tank communities, in not just outreach, but networking, which is very important to see where the pulse is. And obviously with the 3 embassies too. And we work, just sharing information. Although I do have to remind people that we represent the Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian American communities, and not the governments or the nations, or the Baltic nations. Really the central part of our advocacy has to do with security matters. Security. That's what it all is, and security assistance, and especially over the last 11 years since Russia invaded Ukraine, particularly the last 3 or 4 years. And there's been a little bit more focus on specific Baltic security issues, which is really our focus number 1, to make sure that the Baltic countries are secure and receive the proper amount of funding from the American government. And the ambassador did describe what a great partner Estonia is, and that goes for the other 2 Baltic countries too. They're no better friends of the U.S. than Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We're so happy that Finland and Sweden finally joined NATO, but the reasons were a little dire. But it's a stronger security situation, I think, now than there had been before, and that was necessitated by Russia's aggression, obviously. So when I first came to JBANC, the focus was on NATO enlargement, and approximately for 10 years, from 1994 to 2004, that was the focus of our advocacy. And Ambassador Prikk, I'm sure, could explain much more about that and the nuances if anybody has a question about that. But we see now how important that step was for the Baltics to be members of NATO, to get in as full-fledged members in 2004. It didn't happen overnight. The Baltic American communities, and those of you who were around back then, who were involved, you remember it was something that we all pitched in for, and we really put our backs into it. One of the highlights was a petition drive that we had that brought in old style petitions where people actually had to sign a piece of paper and deliver these petitions to the White House. It actually happened to be the day before 9/11 in 2001. But that certainly made a mark, and I think left a great impression with the new Bush administration and the people who worked for the Bush administration, that we were certainly committed. There was no other way. So being in NATO is instrumental, and that transatlantic tie is sacred, really. And the U.S. has led NATO since its inception in 1949. The summit, anniversary summit, was in Washington, D.C. last summer. That was a key drawing point, I think, for having the summit in Washington, and reminding our allies and our partners that the U.S. is a leader in transatlantic relations. There are some complications this year, though, and maybe we'll talk about that later. Also, human rights have been a central focus for us. The Magnitsky Act was something that we had worked on, and the later Global Magnitsky Act to punish Russian human rights violators, corrupt officials, and so forth. And that law is still on the books, and it is being implemented. So it's very important to make that effort to show that we understand the difference between bad guys, good actors, and bad actors. We worked on a number of different things. I don't know if I'm going to get into all of that over the years. A Black Ribbon Day resolution, which we worked on with other community organizations, which passed in the U.S. House of Representatives, which would help to codify August 23rd as a day of remembrance in the U.S. Unfortunately, that only passed the House, so it was a incomplete mission. But I think we've been able to draw a lot of attention to that day, the history of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, but also the Baltic Way, which happened on that anniversary. And August 23rd is something that we always commemorate every year. We've had huge events in Washington, D.C., and I know they're held throughout the United States and in Canada. So people remember not just the bad parts about that, but how the Baltics also came together in 1989. So we will continue to remember. There are other anniversaries, sad ones, the March 25th deportations from 1949, which we'll commemorate in just a few weeks, and in June, the June deportations. But certainly over the last dozen years or so, we have been focused a lot on Ukraine because of Russia's aggression. So we've worked very closely with the Ukrainian American communities. We continue to do that. We've been in different coalitions with Ukrainian Americans, namely the Central and East European Coalition, which brings together the main Baltic organizations. JBANC and the EANC are founding members of the CEC, which came together in 1993 to work with other Central East European communities in the U.S. To advocate more forcefully. If you have 10 million Polish Americans on your side, then that's a good thing. So the CEC, and I know that a number of our board members over the years, and those who have worked with the EANC, like Maria Abel, are very active in the work of the CEC too. And but our work in Congress is really where we like to focus. And in both the House and the Senate, we have great friends, and especially those who are in the Baltic caucuses. So I'm sure those of you who've been around, you've heard of the House Baltic Caucus and the Senate Baltic Freedom Caucus. We saw a record number of members in both the caucuses in the last session of Congress. We're just starting the 119th Congress, which is a two-year session. And we lost about a dozen members in the House, but I think we'll soon get back up to about the mid-90s, and hopefully we'll have more than 100 members of the House in that caucus. And if you think that that means about almost one fourth of the entire U.S. House of Representatives identifying as Friends of the Baltics, that's a pretty incredible number. There aren't many caucuses, or ethnic caucuses at least, that can claim those kind of numbers. And a lot of that has to do with the work of the people at the head of the caucus, or the co-chairs of the caucus, who we have currently, and that's Congressman Don Bacon from Nebraska. He's a Republican, and former Air Force general. And also Salud Carvajal from California, a Democrat, who's a new Democratic co-chair of the caucus. Our last two Democratic co-chairs, Ruben Gallego from Arizona and Adam Schiff from California, both won election in November and have joined the U.S. Senate. So we always like to say that if you're a member of the caucus, the chances of you losing an election are very low. Actually, if you're an incumbent, your chances are pretty good for re-election. But I don't think anybody who was in either of the caucuses lost an election race last year. There were some retirements, though. And in the Senate, we have Senator Richard Durbin from Illinois, who is of Lithuanian background, was a founding member of the Senate Baltic Freedom Caucus in 1997, same year that the House caucus began. And Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa is the Republican co-chairman, and also he joined in 1997. So they're both very senior members of the U.S. Senate. They've both been very helpful in helping with some of our legislation. As I mentioned, the Baltic Security Initiative, along with Congressman Bacon in the last session. So we really count on their advice and their support, and I think they like to hear the stories that we tell them about the actions of the Baltic American communities and everything that everybody out there tonight has done to help the cause in calling members of Congress and in writing and keeping in touch, because without the community, we really couldn't do what we do here. And then just a shout out to our board. We, as I said, we're represented by the three national communities or national organizations. We rotate every year, so the American Latvian Association is in the presidency and chairmanship this year, and will rotate again in next summer. But then also, especially to my office team, Lee Allen, Hendrik Berg, and Marcus Kozlinskis, and couldn't do it without them. Thank you guys for, if you're listening tonight, for putting together the PowerPoint, which I'm going to get into in just a few minutes. But Marcus and Hendrik are actually here thanks to and via the Baltic American Freedom Foundation. And that's a initially U.S. Governmental funded place in the Baltics, where we're able to recruit and bring in folks with exceptional talent to help us out for up to about a year. And both Hendrik and Marcus are great examples of rising talent in the Baltic countries, and so we're so glad to be able to work with them. We're also plugged into other internship programs, including, well, through our organizations also. The American Latvian Association especially has provided summer interns every year for us. So just a whole bunch of people. EANC also through the years has brought in young Estonian Americans to help us out, particularly in the summertime, and the Lithuanians as well. So thank you. Thank you all. And amazingly so, we also have plugged into a Korean organization to bring in interns from Korea. And the more you get to know Koreans, the more you find out that they share so much. As we do, because of their geopolitical situation. Their neighborhood is pretty tough. At least some of the neighbors are kind of nasty, and they have to make the best of it. And so they understand us very well, and I think we understand them much better too. So one last thing, just a plug for our Baltic Spotlights, which we commenced with last summer, actually during our first or during our last advocacy days. And about every month we bring in experts to talk about issues related to geopolitics and the Baltics and Baltic security. And we plan on having another one very soon, hopefully in the next few weeks. And you might want to tune into that as well, and you can sign up. We're on all of the relevant social media platforms, and we can talk a little bit more about that when we get into the actual advocacy part. So that was my very long introduction. I don't know if I should take a break right now or maybe get into the advocacy bit of that. What do you say, moderators?
I think you should keep going and get into the advocacy. We should, I think, be a little aware of our time so we have time for questions. Yeah.
Got it. So I see. If you can give me about another 8 or 9 minutes, I think I can do it.
Great, great.
Okay. So maybe at this stage, if you can bring up the slides, and I want to talk about our Baltic Advocacy Days. So as you see, these are our 8th Baltic Advocacy Days, and they're happening March 31st, April 2nd. The registration is now open, and the deadline is the 23rd. And I mentioned that we have already a record number of people signed up. These are in-person advocacy days, so we're encouraging folks to come to DC for those 3 days. It's actually 2.5 days. We've been, because of COVID, over the last few years, we've been doing them either virtually or also we've had a hybrid advocacy days where we've had a day or two of in-person meetings, but virtual meetings as well. And that's worked pretty well, but we felt that we really needed to get people to DC and go to the representative offices and meet with members of Congress and their staff. So that's why we're doing it this way this year. Not to say that we won't have more virtual events going on. So just basically, advocacy days are your opportunity as an American citizen to meet with members of Congress. Those of you who aren't familiar, and those of you who are familiar, just remind yourself that America is sort of a unique democracy where you can engage directly with congressional offices. If you want to, you can just walk right in, basically, to your Senate offices. Either one of your 2 senators or your representative, and say hello. I'm visiting. I'd like to speak with someone about my concerns about Russia's aggression. And people will listen to you. They'll jot something down. Maybe you can meet with a foreign policy advisor. Maybe the member of Congress himself or herself will be walking by, and they'll take a few minutes to talk with you as well. Always better to make an appointment, of course, but constituents are listened to. So that's a unique advantage that we have here in the U.S. Advocacy days, typically we try to get folks to have at least 2 or 3 meetings with their senators and their representatives, and usually the meetings are about 20 or 30 minutes and not much more. So if you do want to register, there's an opportunity to do that. The photo below is meeting that we have with meeting we had last summer with Congressman Michael Turner's staff. Michael Turner was the Republican chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and he was a longtime member of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and actually got the NATO Parliamentary Assembly to agree to meet in Dayton, Ohio, the city that he represents in Ohio, at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base next year. So that was a real coup. There hasn't been such a big spring meeting for the Assembly in over 20 years. And one of our interns, Leanna Kraft, who's in the middle there of the picture, she's the one who designed our little lovely logo that we're using this year for Advocacy Days. And it shows it symbolizes the unity of the Baltic Americans and Baltic American spirit. My colleague Lee is there, and Gertu Niid, who is one of our Fund for American Studies interns from Estonia and Tartu University last year, and Hindrek Berg there, half of him at least. But he's more than half. He's twice the man that he appears in this picture. And we had a great meeting with Turner's staff. So you can go to the next one, please. We try to keep things very simple. So when we advocate during advocacy days, there are a lot of issues. There's a lot of legislation out there. We have to pick and choose a little bit. But what it really boils down to is security, security, security. So for the Baltics, the most important feature is the Baltic Security Initiative. And here we just have a couple lines of background information. If you're interested, we can tell you much, much more. We have a one pager which we've developed, which we're dropping off at congressional offices as we're meeting with them on a almost daily basis. We're hoping to see an increase in the initial request up to 375 million. The amount which has been allocated actually is a little bit lower than that. We want to make sure that we see projects that are earmarked as being important for the U.S.-Baltic relationship, that they're completed, and then maybe to do a little bit more, to put a little bit more meat on the bones. But the Baltic Security Initiative allows us to do that, and so that's really the thing that we talk about the most. And then the second main issue has to do with Ukraine. And again, you can imagine there's so many things on the table right now. There are things that are outside the realm of legislation in Congress at the current time, but we try to focus and work together with our Ukrainian American friends about issues that also have a little bit of meat on the bone that we can advocate for. So currently the Lend-Lease Act is out there, and other legislation that draws attention to Russia's aggression. And then we try to pick something that would apply to the House in the case of the Lend-Lease Act, currently the bill, and the resolution which is in the Senate. And again, much more detailed if you want to participate or plan on coming to join us. And we do plan on having a briefing session, maybe as early as next week, to begin to discuss these issues. And I can tell you a little bit more about the program if we have a couple minutes, maybe in the Q&As. And then I think we have one more slide after this. And that is, just a little bit about the actual program itself. Thanks. And this is just gives you a breakdown of what to expect. So we have agreed tentatively with the Hudson Institute to host a panel discussion on Monday, March 31st, for those of you who are coming in early. And that will be broken up into two parts. So a panel discussion with policy experts, and then a second part where there's a more detailed briefing on advocacy, which will be held there. And we're hoping to have an event that evening as well, maybe a little bit more casual. On Tuesday, that's our full day of advocacy. And then we plan on having a Baltic Caucus night. We're working with Senate to have that hosted in one of the larger rooms to accommodate everybody and have some entertainment and some food, and it's a great place to network. And then on Wednesday, we just have any follow-up meetings that are there, and a little social gathering later on, which has actually been confirmed near DuPont Circle. Okay, and one more slide to go, and that's it. And then if you want to take a shot of the QR code there, you can go directly to the registration page, but I think that's also been dropped in the chat. If you want to register, please do so. You can also email us directly, or email me directly. My email is JBANC, JBANC @jbank.org. And then we're on social media. As you see, all of the platforms below, we try to update those daily. And also a shout out to Karl Altau, if Karl Altau's here tonight, who's been our LinkedIn man and posting things for us on LinkedIn over the past month. So thanks to him for all of that. Okay, that's a wrap.
So thank you to the ambassador and to Mr. Altau for their for the information they've shared so far. We have a whole list of questions, so it's unlikely we're going to get to all of them. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I'm going to combine, because a number of people have asked very similar questions, so I'm going to combine some of them a little bit and hope to get to at least all of the main topics that people have raised. The first question that came up from a number of different people is whether the Estonian government believes that Vladimir Putin has a vision to reestablish what he considers the rightful Russian territory, which includes the Baltic states. And that one would go to the ambassador. And I'm happy to repeat it.
No need to repeat it, but I would like to thank all who have submitted questions. As I pointed out, the Russians have been pretty constant about their wider objectives related to or regarding this this war, and one of the demands that they put forward is to basically pull NATO back to the 1997 lines. So even Poland, Hungary, and Czech Republic to be out of the at least immediate NATO collective defense cover, notionally still members, but practically very little, if any, defense there. So this would in effect create a buffer zone, and we know what happens with buffer zones when Russia is close to them. So this is why we take this also seriously. This is why Estonia does not intend to become a buffer zone. Will never become a buffer zone.
Thank you. The next question will go to Karl Altau. Oh, I have to find it. There's so many good questions here. Just give me 1 minute. So this question, how can we work with Republicans in the Baltic caucus and more generally in Congress, given that the Republican Party seems to be fully aligned with President Trump, who doesn't appear to maybe be as aggressive or have an as aggressive a stance towards Russia as we might wish? What can people on this webinar do? What can other people do to work with Republicans?
I had a sneaking suspicion that question would come up. I wanted to say that I had mentioned the Baltic caucuses and our friends in the Baltics, and they extend beyond the members of the respective caucuses in Congress. So really, what we hear, not just from the caucus members, but folks on committees, the relevant committees that we deal with, which are armed services, appropriations, foreign relations, and such, that there are a lot of friends of the Baltics. The caucuses are bipartisan. So despite, I think, all of the things that you may see and we may be witnessing in real time going on in Washington, I think the base of support and friends for the Baltics has grown. Knowledge about the Baltics certainly has grown during my time here. I mean, when I first came here and we were trying to explain the difference between the Baltics and the Balkans, and that Dracula did not live in Latvia. And also the number of bipartisan delegations that have visited the Baltic countries, and also staff delegations that have visited the Baltic countries, which have increased substantially over the past years. So I think the knowledge, the support for the Baltics is really at an all-time high. I don't think I've met anybody, well, save one or two offices, that have been critical about the Baltics at all, or have wavered in any kind of support for the Baltics. And you see that also, especially with staff members. I mean, politicians are politicians. They have to play to their bases, and we realize that. But I think deep down that there is support. Yes, Republicans are having to toe the party line. Democrats toe their party line too. But there's been an outward shift, obviously, in their let's say support for let's say policy writ large, maybe. But I think when it comes down to it, we're confident that there is great support for the Baltics. I think the transatlantic relationship is also very strong right now. But not to say that we shouldn't take this all for granted. You know, we have to work on it. It's our responsibility to work with Congress and remind them that you know, it's not just important for the Baltics, but for American security as well. I mean, if Russia wins in Ukraine, God forbid, and their incursions further into Europe, you know, with the aid and abetment of North Korea, with China, Iran, even Cuba, who knows, that would be disastrous. And if you look at security as an insurance policy, that you know, NATO is an insurance policy. The relationship with America is an insurance policy. Relationship with European countries and the EU, that's all insurance. So, but anything that would mean that America would then actually have to, you know, raise its cost for, you know, defending its interests at some point would be just, you know, astronomical. You know, we don't want to fight another Cold War, and we want to stop this and nip it in the bud. So we just have to remind members of Congress, Republicans, but also Democrats, why this is so important.
Thank you. And to follow up on that one a little, and this one I think I'll address first to Ambassador Prikk, and then Mr. Altau, if you want to follow up with anything to add. The question, and this came from a couple of different people, some Baltic Americans and many Americans not of Baltic heritage don't fully seem to understand the danger that Russia poses. So the question is, how can we as Estonian Americans or Americans or non-Americans even, because I know there are people from elsewhere on the webinar right now. So how can all of those of us listening help convince people of the very real threat that Russia poses to Ukraine, to the Baltics, to America? And another sort of way of phrasing that is, what are the 3 most effective arguments in support of Ukraine that could resonate, particularly, this question asks particularly with supporters of President Trump, but in general, what are the 3 most effective arguments in support of Ukraine? So Ambassador Prikk, if you have any thoughts on that.
I'll just kind of combine these two. There was a question how to convince that Russia is the threat, including to Ukraine. I think everyone who has kept their eyes open over the past years cannot miss this horrible threat that comes from Vladimir Putin's Russia. Now it's certainly it's in not only in Ukrainian interest to be to stand up to the Russian aggression and to actually emerge from this war with a better result than some suggest right now. This is in our all collective interest, just as Mr. Altau referred to the impact to the entire free world of Russia potentially emerging victorious from this war are horrific. Now, and thirdly, I would just say that, and Karl referred to the same thing. It's simply cheaper to use this blatant word. Cheaper to help Ukraine to be successful right now than to fight the next war. And I'm not only talking about the Cold War right now. After all, in 1917, when the United States joined the World War One, and 1941 when it joined the World War Two, the ties that kept the economic and political ties that kept the US together with Europe were much less than the connections that we have right now. The actual well-being, the wealth of Americans are deeply connected to the peace and security and prosperity in Europe. If Russia is successful in Ukraine, then this will not end there. And this can unfortunately assure you will affect the United States the way that none of us wants to see. Therefore, it really makes sense to help Ukraine to be successful right now and push Russia back.
Karl, do you have anything to add on that?
No, really, I really can't say it any better than the ambassador just put it. That we cannot be naive as far as Russia goes. I mean, my philosophy is if Putin opens his mouth, it's a lie, and we can't trust them at all. And how to convey that to people, but just the more seriously on the threats that they pose and the horrible death, damage, and destruction that they've wrought upon Ukraine has just been so sobering. The Baltic American communities are, well, okay, on the one hand, relatively small. If you round up a little bit, there are about 1 million Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians of Baltic heritage in the U.S. There are about 1 million Ukrainian Americans, so together are about as big as the Ukrainian community. Just from the Estonian perspective, I'm not good at math, but I figured out that for every Estonian in the U.S., there are about 80 Ukrainians, so it works out that way as well. We've seen how the Ukrainian community has mobilized in the U.S., but worldwide, and certainly the defenders of Ukraine with all the support and admiration from outside of Ukraine, it's just been phenomenal. And I think just to continue to show that support in if you live in a larger town where there are demonstrations, go out and support those. Write a letter to your local newspaper to remind readers that this is a very important thing. And with all that, we help Ukraine. But by helping Ukraine, we help ourselves. And that's really the most important thing. And we help the United States also. We have to stay the course on this. And, we're certainly not ever going to give up. We're going to, be there with Ukraine as we have been. So we just do not be naive. Support Ukraine. Love your Ukrainian neighbors.
Thank you. The next question, one of the issues facing American conservatives, many of whom remember Ronald Reagan and care deeply about Ukraine, is the idea that unless there is an actual plan for winning the war by driving Russia out of all Ukrainian territory, what is the alternative but to negotiations, as President Trump has suggested? Is there a plan to win the war for Europe? And I'm going to combine another question a little bit. Given that the Russian foreign minister rejects peacekeepers, is that really a viable option? Should we negotiate instead?
I guess that's on me, right?
Yeah.
So just as I said in my initial remarks, we absolutely believe that there has to be a good strategy before we enter any negotiations with Russia. This strategy has to be backed up by concrete support to Ukraine and also very firm pressure on Russia. The Western allies have done a lot to support Ukraine. However, we all know that at times this support was too little, too late, too timid. Let's fix this problem. And as I said, Russia is weaker than it seems. So more practical pressure on Russia about particularly about sanctions and secondary sanctions, rather than sanctioning some aspects of its energy exports and banking. Let's turn it around. Sanction all, and if necessary, some exemptions in the banking, for example. And strong message on continuous support to Ukraine. After all, what is most important? Putin thinks that he has more, for the lack of a better word, staying power than the West has. Putin thinks that he can outlast us, and that we are desperate to get any kind of settlement, even at the cost of Ukrainian lives, Ukrainian territory, Ukrainian future. We should deny him this pleasure of believing that. And now about the negotiations, absolutely every war ends with negotiations. No war ends when people in the trenches just get bored with it and start to go home. It doesn't happen in wars. So, but with negotiations, it shouldn't be just about showing up at negotiations and seeing where it takes us. We have to have a together with Ukraine and others in Europe. After all, this is European security. Talked to and discussed through strategy on what is the strategic desired outcome. Where are the red lines? What are the things that have to be achieved along with this stated desired outcome? Only then can we reach a just and durable peace. If we enter the negotiations without a solid plan, then it's possible that we end up leaving with Putin's plan.
And a bit of a follow-up to that question, and this one is also for the ambassador. And again, there are two parts to this one. One is that President Macron is considering expanding the French nuclear shield to cover other European countries. What is the stance of the Estonian government on this idea? And then along a similar vein, in light of Russia's aggressive posture, would Estonia be willing to withdraw from the Ottawa Treaty on anti-personnel landmines? Ukraine has shown how effective landmines can be. So two questions about President Macron's potential expansion of the nuclear shield and also withdrawing from landmines treaty.
Right, thank you. So on the landmines, it's been the issue that has been discussed several times since Estonia became the member of the Ottawa Convention, and recently this discussion has become very lively again. We don't have an official decision on that yet. I won't be surprised if there will be a policy change. However, I also know that the defense forces are actively looking at how the changes in technology have made, let's say, some of the uses of landmines redundant, or where the newer technological solutions may have actually, been able makes it possible to achieve the same kind of effects. So it's still very much open. Now on the proposal of President Macron, again, this is not yet something that has been reached the stage of official positions of different countries. I think what's fair to say is that President Macron has been in a very constructive position, or has filled a very constructive role during the past couple of years by keeping the defense and security debate very active in Europe, and certainly this is part of it. But it's also very clear that without improving the conventional military capabilities in Europe, we cannot get to the we're a considerably better place than we are today. So the conventional and nuclear capabilities certainly are complementary rather than replacing each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Altau, this question is for you. JBANC's lobbying has clearly been incredibly valuable in the past. Today, it appears that everything has been turned on its head and conventional avenues of influence are increasingly cast aside. Are JBANC and other organizations, similar organizations, looking for ways to think outside the box to create pressure and demand accountability from US legislators?
Well, I think to answer that is that we're just going to keep on doing what we're doing, because outreach is very important. That's the most important thing. We have to talk to all sides. Sometimes it's a little tougher. I mean, I found out personally that some of the offices where you think that there's going to be opposition and views, there really hasn't been. Like we discussed earlier, that there may be party lines on certain issues, and certainly notably about the vote on Ukrainian security assistance last year. We saw where there was just unanimous support for Ukraine and assistance in 2022, which became less and less, and it was a battle over many months to finally see the House and the Senate pass those supplemental bills to allow Ukraine to receive funding, and we were worried actually that not all of the funding had been allocated by the end of the Biden term. And I know there were calls for longer range firing capabilities so that Ukraine could project its defense beyond its prescribed borders. So those are things that we have to continue to work on. I mean, if funding for Ukraine right now seems to be off the table, we have to continue to work with Congress to demonstrate that it's important to continue to fund Ukraine. It may change after some kind of a agreement between the US and Ukraine. Things may rapidly change. We're not holding out great hopes for that. I mean, we see that it's kind of an uphill struggle right now. But I mean, creatively, we have to continue to work with Congress. Reaching out to the current administration is not easy. I think maybe the embassy is a little bit better with that. They have their ways, but it's also key to continue to project our voices to the media. And I think it's more of a case of changing public opinion. I mean, one of the offices that we visited, we did a round of visits with moderate Republicans at the end of last year, because they were ones who had voted in favor of Ukraine assistance. And for all of this, I think we can kind of keep in the back of our minds that, by doing that they are supporting our interests, Baltic American interests, and our security concerns. But we spoke with a number of offices, and I don't think you saw anyone where anybody would say that they don't support Ukraine, which is incredible. Except for one office, they did say, and we've heard this maybe increasingly, that in an office in the Midwest, that they understand that their sympathies lie with Ukraine and supporting Ukraine. They understand, but if they get 800 phone calls from constituents saying, don't support Ukraine, and you've got 100 people coming in or calling to say support Ukraine, the member has to take that into consideration, maybe against their will. I mean, my point is that, take a stand, be brave, like Congressman Bacon from Nebraska, he calls it as it is, whether he was a Reagan Republican or not. I mean, I think he identifies as one, but you have to be bold enough and brave enough to not fear backlash. You have to lead. I mean, the people who you vote for, to go to Congress, whether you voted for them or not, they're your representatives. They have to lead. And I think the point for us is to have them consider making a personal moral judgment, moral choice on this. And I think if it comes down to that, you will see that there is support for Ukraine. And that really hasn't wavered that much. I mean, yeah, there's politics and there's all this noise, which is terrible, but I think you have to get down to that and just make sure that your voice is heard, our voices are heard, and that there's this moral imperative to do the right thing, because this is a case of good versus evil. As Reagan pointed out, there was an evil empire, there is an evil empire, and we have to fight to win that.
Thank you. I'm going to summarize a little bit as a plug for everybody who's listening to maybe call your representatives, your senators, your members of Congress, because Congress still passes laws and still does appropriations. Obviously, if you're listening from another country, that's not an avenue available to you, but you can call your own representatives. Congress still passes laws, does appropriations, and they do respond to pressure from constituents. So the more people call in support of Ukraine, the more effective that's going to be. So the next question goes to the ambassador. There are a number of questions here sort of that I would characterize as very concerned about the future. And this is one of those questions. So if the United States weakens its support for or even pulls out of NATO, what will happen to the organization? Has it done any planning for a future without the US?
NATO historically has been the organization that has X number of members, but United States has always been the glue that keeps it all together, so to say. It's been the most important member, both politically, economically, certainly militarily. So to have a NATO without the United States, it would not be exactly the same organization anymore. I personally have been assured by several people who I tend to believe have had some access to President Trump's inner circle and the way he thinks, or at least the way he thought short while ago, that he generally thinks that NATO now is much more effective and better organization for also the US interests than it used to be during his first administration. Now, things may change, of course. Oh, I wouldn't rule out anything. Even though at this point I don't see this happening. But when it comes to Europe, I think you all have noticed that there's a lot of action going on recently in Europe that is very much related to defense and not only the defense spending, but also on how how could the countries form, if necessary, the so-called coalition of the willing or coalitions of the willing, in particularly in the case some kind of peace keeping or peace enforcement operation in Ukraine becomes a reality. I'm pretty sure that considering the current let's say state of mind of different European nations, the Europe will not fall back anytime in the foreseeable future to the habits of 1930s, where everyone rather tried to be out there for itself, but the collective mind is very much there. But again, we are certainly working on the basis of keeping the NATO the most effective military alliance as it's been for 75 years, and are not putting together alternative NATOs out of the limelight.
Thank you. And this will be the last question. Hopefully your voice can hold out for one more question. How would you respond to the Russian talking point that it was promised that NATO won't expand to Russia's borders?
Yeah, this is easy, and then again, there are so many layers that must say, don't get me started on that. So we could easily organize another webinar on that. But, just a few points. So Russia claims that someone promised Russia. Now, firstly, these claims all go back to 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell. So there was no Russia behind table, right? Back then, it was the Soviet Union that the Western democracies negotiated different things. So for Russia to claim that they were given some promises is simply, historically not accurate or not possible. Now, talking about historic accuracy, it's very important to say that usually these claims, if at all they are anything close to sophisticated, they go back to Secretary of State James Baker meeting then the first secretary of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev. Gorbachev himself, just as the big James Baker, Gorbachev himself has stated loud and clear that such an issue was never discussed and never, therefore, never any promises given to him or the Soviet Union. Thirdly, that kind of claim in itself is almost scandalous. Russia claiming that someone promised them, which, as we have already discussed, was not historically possible and not accurate, that the countries won't have the right to join NATO is about denying countries the right rights that are in UN Charter and the founding documents of the OSCE, the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, which clearly foresee the right for countries to select their own, let's say, security architecture or the way of feeling secure. So many times wrong there. But I would like to make one more further comment here. Russia arguing that they feel threatened by their neighboring countries is not a novel concept. This goes back certainly to the 16th century, if not earlier. Unfortunately, Estonia has been the victim of these claims several times. One of the loudest instances of Russia claiming to be threatened by the neighboring countries was their rationale to invade our territory during the Livonian War. Later also the Great Northern War, and so forth. So whenever you meet someone asking you about what about Russian legitimate security concerns because they are afraid of NATO or something else, please ask them, so how is it possible that Russia has been constantly afraid of their neighbors, yet in the process they've expanded from a relatively second-rate, smallish state around Moscow. They've expanded to the continental empire, stretching across 11 time zones. This is how the shape and the way they're being threatened has actually resulted. Oh, and actually one more point, and I do apologize for being long here. Again, when Russia states that they are afraid of NATO, there's a very clear point that everyone can make or point out to people using this language with them. So some of the closest military bases to NATO that Russia has are only a few dozen miles from Estonian borders, Estonian and Latvian, in Pskov, in Petseri, and also some other places close to Estonia and also Finland. So these are the closest, let's say, first responding bases for Russia, according to common logic. Yet these bases are basically empty. These bases are empty because the troops who served there have been taken to Ukraine to kill Ukrainians and get killed there. So the reality their practical actions absolutely don't support their claims and their arguments of feeling threatened by NATO. If the only border that they really have empty right now is the NATO border, because they know that there is no one in their sane mind in NATO countries willing to invade Russia.
Thank you very much. So there are some questions that didn't get answered. We have taken them, taken them down so that we have a record of them. First, on behalf of the EANC, or Eesti Rahvuskomitee Ühendriikides, I'd like to thank Ambassador Prikk and Mr. Altau for sharing both their expertise and their time with us tonight. I know that we're all better informed, as well as maybe having some renewed motivation to go out and support Ukraine, the Baltics, and generally security for the world. So thank you very much. Suur aitäh teile mõlemile. Thank you also to Valev Laube and Linask for all their work in making this evening's In Focus event possible, all of their work, especially behind the scenes. And I also want to thank everybody who has attended this evening. I hope that you have all gotten a lot out of the evening. And just a couple of notes that you can visit the EANC website, which is estosite.org. We'll have some talking points up there and myth busters, some of which you can take down and share on social media, for example, if you enjoy doing that. You can also go to jbank.org to sign up for the Advocacy Days or just to get more information. And you can go to washington.mfa.ee, which is the embassy's website. And all three of those organizations are also on social media in various ways. So please do stay in touch. If you have additional questions or comments, feel free to go to that EANC website and send us an email or contact us in some other way. We'll continue to have seminars and webinars for you so we can keep everybody informed. Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I would like to really sincerely thank the EANC and every individual contributor today for this excellent event, for this excellent opportunity, and for working tirelessly day in and day out. I think the letters that have recently been sent out to the members, and also the let's say plea for being active that was included with the invitation to today's event were incredibly helpful. And the let's say the argumentation that was in the letter that really Mai-Liis sent out, again very eloquent, to the point. Thank you very much for your work that you do and for this event today. And I would just ask everyone and anyone that felt motivated by today's event, please, and you feel that you want to speak up, there is always the phone number or mailing address of your representatives in congresses, not only the U.S. Congress but also local Congress and or local representative bodies, and certainly also articles or social media postings. I know all the minefields with social media, and Maia people who are willing to, face some of the very nasty comments and everything, but every voice counts. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good evening.
you.